The reviews are in, and we're going to tell you what they are. He's Todd Vandenberg, and he's seen 2 movies this week, whereas I am merely Rob Steele and only seen the one. So, Todd, we're going to start with you, but we're doing this as a comparison thing that I've wanted to do for a while.
Yes.
We're comparing 2 movies that came out on the same day that were supposed to be both big, had the potential at least to be big blockbusters. One of them was, and the one I saw wasn't. Meanwhile, you saw Aquaman.
I did see Aquaman, and you also saw Aquaman, so I would like you to jump in whenever you feel like jumping in and throwing in your 8 cents worth, because I don't just want 2.
Huh.
Our friend Lee, who eventually will be on the show again at least once this year, had already seen it, and he had said that it wasn't a great movie, but it was entertaining. It's a fun popcorn movie. It did what it's supposed to do. And happily, I can agree with him. I kind of have a feeling
as well, but
well, there we go. I kind of have a feeling he might have liked it just a little more than I did, just from his level of enthusiasm for it. And I'm not overly enthusiastic for the movie, but compared to the train wreck that the DC movies have been, other than Wonder Woman, this is a fun movie. Movies are supposed to be fun. That's pretty much what you can expect from a superhero movie. So there you go. Jason Momoa does a great job. I love the fact that they dialed down the brotastic aspect of his characters somewhat, because I had enough of that crap. I get it. We don't want him to be a wimp and a geek because his name is Arthur, and that's kind of how people have felt about the character from the Super Friends days. But as you have mentioned many times, if you have been reading the comics for, I don't know, the past 30 years or something like that, Aquaman actually pretty much of a badass. And if you've seen any of the animated movies, Aquaman is pretty much of a badass.
He had to cut off his own hand at one point.
Exactly.
I mean, that's very Game of Thrones, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it's portrayed, and I'm going to say it just because I have to say it. Yes, it is a fish out of water story, but the switch is that Aquaman is in the water, and he's still the fish out of water because he's been in the human world. So as he says several times, he doesn't want to be king. He doesn't want to be blah, blah. He doesn't want any of this crap. He just wants to go hang out with the guys at the bar and drink beer, because that's him. And occasionally perform awesome rescues. Action sequences are excellent in this. Again, I think Momoa does a really good job. He's got great screen presence. I'm happy for him because he's been in a lot of movies that just went, despite his screen presence, which if you've seen Game of Thrones is really obvious. So it's nice that the right vehicle found him. So good for him. Good for Aquaman making a huge amount of money, which I'm sure you'll talk about when you talk about that other movie that you're going to talk about. But the whole movie, the cast is really good in it, except here's where the movie really falls down for me. Not that it falls down to the point where I didn't enjoy it, but the cast could have been better. And I'm not talking about Amber Heard. She's fine. I'm not talking about Willem Dafoe because Willem Dafoe is freaking Willem Dafoe. I'm talking about Patrick Wilson. Patrick Wilson plays the big bad.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like my mailman playing the big bad, or, the lunch lady or something. He is one of the least intimidating freaking people. I don't care how often you have the camera angled down over his brow as he lowers his head so he looks meaner. I like Patrick Wilson as an actor, but for that role, I thought he was awful. I thought it was a terrible casting choice.
It wasn't Owen Wilson. Be happy.
It might as well have been. But that's about how intimidating he was. I don't care what costume you put him in. I don't care how angry he tries to sound. I thought he was a terrible villain. It was awful. Black Manta was a much more interesting character, and I think they spent like 12 minutes with him. The character would have been fine if they'd had a different actor. That was an awful choice. Doesn't ruin the movie by any means, but if they'd had a really good actor playing the role, I think this could have been a much better movie. And it would have was like, wow, they knocked it out of the park. But DC, people talk about the problem that Marvel has with their villains. Well, the problem Marvel has with their villains is they kill them off a lot. The problem is not that they don't have interesting villains, they just kill them off in a movie. The problem DC has with their villains is they suck. Steppenwolf. Who cares about Steppenwolf? It's like, a CGI big bad. It's like, nobody cares about that crap.
Steppenwolf is a good bad guy, but not the way they did him.
Exactly. Ares, what a tremendous bad guy. I hardly even remember that he was in Wonder Woman. That's how pathetic the portrayal was of the character. And here you are again.
And even then, you're thinking it's Lupin.
Yes.
It's Professor Lupin from Harry Potter.
Figure it out, DC, because ever since the DC extended universe started, after Nolan's movies were done, wow. I mean, not exactly batting much of anything. I mean, Jesse Eisenberg as Luthor is like, it's terrible missteps in so many of these movies. It's like, you got to get this crap right. But who the hell thought Patrick Wilson could play Jesus. Okay, other than that, fun movie. Jason Momoa is very good. Effects look really good. Love the fact that they put in an updated version of the iconic costume, because that was like actually a very cool, big moment. Very, very nice. Enjoyed Aquaman. You can't go see it at the movie theaters almost anymore because it's just about done. But soon, actually, I think it is available now on digital.
I think it might be.
Grab it. Watch it at home. Definitely worth watching. Just imagine someone who's actually scary as Ocean Master, and you'll like it better.
There you go. Movie that came out on the same day as Aquaman and looked like it could have been good. The one I saw, Mortal Engines. Dun, 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 dun. No, wait, that's Mortal Kombat. Which somehow did better than Mortal Engines. I don't get that. But the Mortal Engines movie, set way in the future, where we follow the story of Tom Natsworthy, who sounds like he should be in a Harry Potter movie, played by Robert Sheehan, who's a historian living on the city of London. Now, I say on, not in, because 1,000 years ago, particle weapons toasted the planet, and the only way some cities survived was to make them mobile. So think of it as a lot of little Howl's Moving Castles and one big one named London. So there's that. Anyway, Tom stops the assassination of Thaddeus Valentine, the city's alleged savior, played by Hugo Weaving, one of the two actors I'd heard of before the movie started. Anyway, he was going to be assassinated by Hester Shaw, played by Hera Hilmar. Okay. The girl on the movie poster with the red scarved face. Yeah, Valentine killed her mother, who was an archaeologist who had found one of ye ancient particle weapons that Valentine wanted so he could take over the world. Anyway, Tom hears her story after a rather good chase scene. Valentine knows that Tom knows the story and kicks them both out of London in a way that frankly should have killed them, but didn't, because otherwise you wouldn't have a story. From there, they join the resistance and we get our movie. And this is just the first 15 minutes.
Oh, jeez.
This is a very fast-paced story, which is a good thing. I mean, we get our movie, and damn, it's a good movie. There are a lot of other elements from other movies that people loved that are thrown in. There's a bit of Dune, The Matrix, Terminator, Evil Dead, Star Wars, Flash Gordon. Come on, they threw that in. And a whole lot of Mad Max on a city-sized scale. So there's a lot of stuff here to like. The storyline, think of it as something you would see in an old school Doctor Who episode, only this time there's a budget. Ooh. I mean, are there any problems with it? Sure, of course. There's a lot of contradictory tech involved. Think steampunk only with jet-powered blimps. Does that matter? No, this is not a thinking movie. It's a fun movie, kind of like Star Wars. If you think about it too much, it doesn't really work. But if you just sit back and enjoy it, damn, it's a good movie. It's fun. Is it as good as Star Wars? Well, it was produced by Peter Jackson of Lord of the Rings fame. And honestly, if I think he had produced or directed a Star Wars movie, it would turn out this good. Now, I will want to see it again, basically to see if it'll have the legs that I think it should have. This could become a good cult movie. And it's something I do highly recommend. And I've seen the DVD at Walmart. Go get it. If nothing else, do it just to hear the explanation about the food of the ancients. And actually, I'm going to run through that real quick because it's very funny to me. Basically, when they get kicked off London, Hester produces a Twinkie from her cloak, and she starts to eat it because they don't have any. He thinks they don't have any food. He being Tom goes, "Oh, we don't have any food," and she pulls out the Twinkie and starts eating it. And he looks at the expiration date. And he goes, "This went bad in 2118. That's over 1,000 years ago." She shrugs and says, "The food of the ancients never goes old," and hands him one of the Twinkies, and he takes a bite of it and goes, "You know what? You're right. It doesn't go bad."
That is awesome.
That was, and that's in the first 15 minutes too. I'm not spoiling anything. There are only two reasons I can think of as to why this movie was not the big blockbuster that it should have been. One, apart from Hugo Weaving and Colin Salmon, and if I look at the cast list like I did after the movie, apparently Stephen Lang was the guy in the heavy makeup. There aren't any big name actors attached to this movie, which can't help. The other thing is that it was released opposite Aquaman, who had a shirtless Jason Momoa on the movie poster. That alone, I think, killed off any other movie.
Of course, Aquaman is a tie-in to the DC universe, and he was fairly well received, not by me, but overall from his appearance before. So in Justice League, so obviously, and it's a character that has been around for decades. So, and Mortal Engines, it's based on a
novel. I could not see this as a novel because there are too many chase scenes in it.
Yeah.
And I mean, chase scenes, I think Eddie Izzard did a bit a long time ago about how chase scenes don't work in books because you have they ran down the hall and she ran after him and he jumped over the thing and she jumped over the thing and went under the thing and they went around the corner and they weren't there anymore. And that doesn't work in a book.
Yeah. Chase scenes can work in books, but I mean
they can, but it's weird,
tricky, and they're weird. But
it works better as a visual.
What surprises me is how badly it did, because I was thinking about seeing this, like, oh, this looks interesting, and it just got destroyed. Here's an example talking about how badly Mortal Engines did at the box office, and again, that is no judgment on how good the movie is. I mean, we've talked about movies which, I've got the money in my wallet. What their total grosses seems like sometimes.
Buckaroo Banzai?
Yeah, exactly. This is what Mortal Engines did in the U.S. This is not opening night, opening weekend. This is total. Just under $16 million. Throw in the $67 million overseas, which is okay, but not great. $83 million. Total run. Everywhere. Everywhere.
On a budget of
opening week.
That.
The budget of $100 million. Opening weekend, Aquaman did just under $68 million. That's in the U.S. alone on the opening weekend. Aquaman made almost as much just in the U.S. in 3 days. Okay, 4 counting Thursday nights.
Yeah.
As Mortal Engines did in its entire run everywhere. Everywhere. So, yeah, one movie did really well. One did kind of like, Oh, and overseas it did $94 million in its opening weekend.
Oh, they win.
Kind of won a little bit on that one. And probably, I mean, from your description of Mortal Engines, and I know you saw Aquaman. Well, you've seen them both. Yeah. Which did you like better?
As much as I have been a proponent of Aquaman, if nothing else, just to see someone realize that Namor is a really much more ludicrous character, I think I liked Mortal Engines a bit more.
I had a feeling. Just the fact that you hesitated, the fact that it's in the ballpark.
Yeah.
And of course, that's one person's opinion, but it's one reasonably sound person's opinion. And I'm looking forward to seeing this, but you just never know how things are going to go. So here you have one movie which made twice as much in the opening weekend as the other one did in its entire run. And it's a Peter Jackson property. And it's based on a really well-known book. So despite the lack of stars, it had 2 big tie-ins.
It should have done something.
Thought it did. At least they thought it did. But yeah, they probably should have moved. Would have been the smart move to move like about a month out. But they didn't. And especially considering that how well, we were talking about Black Panther before, how well Black Panther did in what was previously considered the wasteland of movie releases, February.
Yeah.
And because what's been out this year? Not much. They've been waiting for the movie I'm going to talk about in just a little bit to bump up the box office, because the box office is down almost 27% so far this year compared to last year.
If the Dragon Ball movie is still one of the top grossing films of the year.
Exactly. There just hasn't been a lot out. So Mortal Engines, they should have pushed it back. Probably wouldn't have done Aquaman money, because that's crazy how much it's done, but would have done much better.
It would have done much better.
It would not have made Captain Marvel money, though, either.
No.
Captain Marvel, a lot of discussion about how much box office it was going to make, and a lot of early estimates were saying, well, we think it'll probably hit 60 opening weekend, which is really bad for a Marvel property. And then they started bumping up, and now it's getting closer to 100. Well, Now, the opening weekend, they're predicting, and again, box office doesn't necessarily equate to quality, Home Alone, but at one time, the highest grossing comedy in U.S. history, which is awful. Anyway,
Doesn't make any sense.
now they're thinking it'll be somewhere between 155 and 160 million for opening weekend. Again, that would be twice what Mortal Engines made in its entire run. And box office is kind of fun, but that's not why I don't go see a movie hoping it's going to be the biggest moneymaker of the year. I don't really care that much about that. It's just interesting. But I liked Captain Marvel quite a bit. I'll put it kind of in the middle of the Marvel movies. I don't think it's far from the best of the Marvel movies. It's far from the worst of the Marvel movies. And understanding that when you say the worst of the Marvel movies, that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they're good. That's the bar for Marvel. Marvel has a much higher standard than DC movies, unfortunately for DC.
Except maybe Iron Man 2.
Even I like Iron Man 2. I don't think it's a bad movie by any means. I think it's a good movie. But compared to Black Panther, compared to Infinity War, Captain America, the First Avenger, it kind of sucks because the bar is so high. Just by itself is like, I enjoy that movie. It's a fun movie. Anyway, Captain Marvel, I think, is much better than, say, Iron Man 2 or Thor, The Dark World, The Incredible Hulk.
I like The Incredible Hulk, but
I like
apparently no one else does.
No, I like it a lot. But again, it's like, where does it fit in the pantheon of all these great Marvel movies they've done? So, Captain Marvel, of course, it's an origin movie, but they do it a little differently because it's done through flashbacks. So they change the structure up a little bit. Helps a lot. Brie Larson plays this young woman who wakes up and she's been injured in some battle. And then you realize actually she's having a flashback and she's about to go into action on a mission. She's with the Kree and they're attacking some planet because they're trying to rescue a spy that they've been sent down because the spy is trying to infiltrate the Skrulls. The Skrulls being, if you know Marvel Comics, the shape-shifting race who turn out to be major players in a huge storyline in Marvel Comics history. They're the big baddies, kind of. So, and the Kree a lot of them are blue-skinned, and they're the more helpful race. Sometimes, maybe, we'll see. Except for the fact that Ronan the Accuser, who is in this movie, he's Kree.
He's a Kree.
So it's like, let's keep that in mind. So they go off on this mission. She gets captured by the Skrull because the Skrulls were actually there, and they didn't realize it until it's too late. Goes on through the process of how she escapes from the Skrull. And she's going to escape from the Skrull because if she doesn't, the movie's over. So it's not a spoiler. So shut up. Goes back to Earth. She goes back to Earth because you've seen Nick Fury in the trailers. So again, no spoiler. Sorry. I will say the de-aging process they used to portray Nick Fury and Phil Coulson, yay, Phil, looks really, really good. Did a really good job.
It's so much better than the plastic job they did in, what was it, X-Men 3?
Yeah.
I love Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, but damn, they didn't need to be turned into, Autons from Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Plastic mannequin people.
Yeah, they're getting better with that process. Samuel L. Jackson has a lot of fun because he gets to play a lighter, looser version, also known as Looter, a looser, lighter version of Nick Fury, where he's not so hard-bitten and cynical because he hasn't gone through everything that he's gone through by the time the Avengers roll around. So Brie Larson is excellent in the role. I think she did a really great job. And yes, to some extent, this is about female empowerment. It's portrayed more as it's about the empowerment of Carol Danvers more so. So it's not like a major statement. If you want to take it as a major statement, take it that way. I have no problem with that statement. If you're one of these, as we talked about on the show Sunday, if you're one of these butthurt little boys who, that mommy weaned you too soon, so, you're hurt by the thought of women having any kind of power, this movie isn't for you. But stay off the internet. Just, stay in your little cave and hide from humanity. Cannot
go back to Sunday's show for a further explanation.
Yes. Anyway, again, I didn't think this was a great movie, but I do think it's a really good movie. Excellent action sequences. Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers gradually becomes Captain Marvel through the process of this. So there's a few really strong scenes when she realizes what she can really do and who she really is, because that's what the movie is about. It's about her becoming the most she can be. So it's like a recruitment ad for the military. Again, there's lots of humor. Some of the problems I had with it is some of the humor just seemed a little flat and a little forced, where the jokes just didn't quite ring true the way they usually do in Marvel movies. To me, that's where it falls down. It's like some of the humor seemed a little more forced than it should have been. It didn't really flow like it does in like Thor Ragnarok, or even in Infinity War, which has tons of humor in it. Thank God, because otherwise we all would have wished we'd been snapped out of existence by the end of the thing.
Yeah.
So, absolutely recommend it. Not one of the best Marvel movies, not far from one of the worst Marvel movies. And again, I don't really know anyone who's seen any of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies and said that movie was terrible. It was like, oh, that wasn't that great, or that was okay. And it's far above that level, far, far above that level. I'll probably see it again at the theaters before it hits video. Definitely sets up Endgame. And yes, of course, there are 2 post-credit scenes. There's a mid-credit scene. There's a post-credit scene. Yes, you should stay for both of them or just watch them on YouTube, because they'll be on YouTube if they're not already. But very entertaining movie. Again, Samuel L. Jackson actually does a little comic relief, which is interesting for him. Had to be fun playing Fury like that. You find out what happened to his eye, which is also kind of fun and sad at the same time. But very good movie. Recommend it. Not the best thing I've seen, but you should definitely go see Captain Marvel.
Actually, I'm thinking just for the opening Marvel title.
Yes.
We talked about that before the show, too.
Yeah. The opening title is a tribute. That's where they do the tribute to Stan Lee. And it's really affecting, because when they show the outline of the word Marvel, and it's filled with the images from all the superheroes, it's filled with images from Stan Lee from all the movies. And it gets you in the feels. It's like, why did you do this to me? I came here to be entertained, not to be, and it is still kind of entertaining, but yeah, it definitely gets you. It's like, wow, that's really awesome. Although, as I said earlier, it's like, I kind of wish they would throw in a little bit about Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby, because Stan Lee was writing that he wasn't drawing. So let's throw in just a little bit for those guys too, please. But yeah, it's very affecting and very well done. Nicely done. And yes, of course, he does have a cameo. Because
I was about to ask, because I haven't seen it yet. How did the theater react to that?
The theater reacted like there was kind of a collective, very soft, quiet. I mean, you literally could hear some people making that noise. So it was pretty cool. Very, very cool. And few people clapped. It was nice. I mean, I'm not talking about the end of the movie. I'm talking about just the credit roll for Stan. It was pretty slick. Pretty slick.
Yeah.
Nice of them to do that.
See, now we've given you 3 things to go see. Yes, 2 of them you can watch at home, but Captain Marvel's worth it, I think.
Yeah, definitely worth it. Don't believe the internet trolls. We were talking about Sunday, is like, don't listen to audience, don't look at audience scores for anything anymore, because you've got this group of people who are butthurt about whatever decision the filmmakers made. So they don't want you to go see The Last Jedi, or they don't want you to go see Black Panther, or they don't want you to go see Captain Marvel. It's like, listen to your friends, listen to us if you're kind of desperate for advice. But yeah, don't pay attention to the audience scores anymore, sadly, because it's no longer reliable. It's a sad thing, but I imagine within a couple of years, if they don't absolutely change how they format that, they'll be gone, because they're becoming useless.
So in the meantime, ignore the scores. Come back Sunday, because we'll have more news for you. But until then, get out and go see a movie.
That's pretty much it.